Before I get ahead of myself, I must show you excessively saturated, low-resolution images of 18th century dogs. You will thank me later. The keen-eyed among you will note that this is not a dog, but I am not here to appeal to you. I am here to appeal to the masses. It's an overcast day in Rome. October and I stand opposite the first floor of Via Bartolomeo Galletti, admiring the relationship between its flat orange wall and the gnarly, moss-laden wall of a parallel staircase. We came here this morning via a fascinating, though lamentably not very visible mural and an ancient pyramid. Let it be noted, though many cities have inventive graffiti murals, few, in my experience, have casual antique pyramids punctuating arbitrary junctions. Not very many years ago, this marvel bored the local Romans so much they attempted to conceal it from themselves with the cunning use of shrubs. It was built in the honour of a Roman legate, who both massacred, then was humiliatingly defeated by, Jewish rebels in the First Jewish-Roman War. In the 18th century it became the obelisk of Rome's non-Catholic cemetery, consecrated principally for British and German foreigners like October and I. Intending to get ourselves buried immediately, we try to storm the gates, but find we've come on a day they're unstormable, so we look at the names on this signpost rather than on the graves. It inters the bones and or ashes of two of my teenage pop star icons, Johnny J. Dog Cazzizzle and Pizzy B. Man Shalizzle, the former next to the visitors centre, the latter next to the toilets. Also Antonio Gramsci, who is hilariously next to the chapel. We walk on past a monument and the letters AWD, Andrew Wogsy Dooption. Overlooking the city is like reading the 100th draft of an increasingly incoherent and outlandish vanity project written collectively by the entirety of humankind and read only in fragmentary slices from lookouts like this. October remarks on how inconceivable it is to imagine the point of view of any one person looking from any one of the windows we're looking at, let alone all of them simultaneously, which is what is happening. No human mind could begin to rally within itself the immensity of empathic power one would require to gather even a vaguely accurate impression of what the people of any given city are about on any given afternoon. We look at this gorgeous mesh of cathedralic branches. Go trees, do what you're doing, we love you! For a minute or two before admiring the visual harmony of this pale blue car, the bust behind it and the two trees sprouting from its bonnet and its bumper. When you look at a city from above through foliage, you feel like an invading force, coming to conquer or liberate the homes and palaces beneath you as the case may be. Below the terrace of Piazza Giuseppe Gabrialdi, a conglomerate of Yankees unleash their disturbing American emotions and enthusiasm on our placid Anglo-Germanic ears. Before the screaming hug you are witnessing now, all the members of this Yank clump spent several minutes telling each other how great and amazing and special they all are, how precious this experience has been, how they will carry always in their hearts the memory of this time together. Remember that you must die, I yell at them. The view before us is lovely, so we sit side by side and paint it. The results are like this. Afterwards we go home. That evening we dine on pasta with honeyed carrots and baked apples, a spicy multi-bean salad with caramelised onion, and the star of the show, fried aubergines. The only spices currently at our disposal are curry powder and turmeric, so imagine those flavours on your palate as you watch with us this clip of Mussolini addressing the American people in English.
I am very glad to be able to express my friendly feelings towards the American nation. Friendship with which Italy looks at the millions of citizens who from Alaska to Florida, from the Pacific to the Atlantic, live in the United States, is very deeply rooted in our hearts. This feeling, created by mutual interests, so contributed to the preparation of an ever brighter era in the life of both nations. I grieve the wonderful energy of the American people, and I see and recognize among you sons of your land as well as ours, my fellow citizens, who are working to make America great.
The following day is miserable. We drift around drizzly parks, reading the benches too wet to sit on. Someone really needs to teach the degenerate scumhole youth of our era how to draw swastikas properly. This criticism of finance, though expressed with Ciceronian eloquence, is undermined by infantine graphological proficiency. How am I supposed to take your revolutionary memorandum contra financial malpractice and pro-soft drug use seriously, backed up by however much implicit gun violence, when your swastikas turn out Triskelions? If this person was actually trying to draw a Triskelion, I offer my sincere and heartfelt apologies. We stare at a light as it remains red. Outside this ancient horse-drawn vehicle racing stadium, I watch a woman pose for a photo, then look at the photo she's posed for, and think about the people posing for pictures on the sides of buses. This balcony on the big famous cylinder looks like a good place to pose for a photo, or indeed to rile up a swarm of plebs. I contemplate the horse strapped to this empty carriage, standing still, catching rain on its bare neck as an umbrella shelters the empty seat behind it. A little further back from the big famous cylinder, I fasten my attention on the pair of shoes in the top left, threaded over the power line to indicate, if the British custom carries over, the position where a young, enterprising individual, fresh from a spat of tagging public furniture with less than perfectly executed fascistic iconography, can compensate for what a less generous man might call his faults in the purchase and use of soft drugs. I look up at this woman walking to the end of the cobbled street and look down at this comet of petrol flaring its rainbow onto the tarmac. On this tome lamp blockaroonie at the end of the wall, whose authorised name in spite of a thorough gander through my glossary of architecture remains unknown to me, but which is nevertheless very popular with pigeons, someone has written what I believe translates as Salvini, spicy, anarchy! Permit me now to show you Mussolini's address to Germany, where he speaks German.
Kameraden, der Welt, Sieg ist von Schlacht, was das Ergebnis der Begegnung von Berlin sein wird. Krieg oder Friede, können wir antworten, der Führer zu Sieg, mit lauter Stimme, Friede! Der Faschismus hat seine Dick, der er treu zu bleiben, der Dick. Und diese Dick deckt sich mit meiner persönlichen Moral. Klar und offen reden. Und wenn man einen Freund hat, mit ihm zusammen diesen Wände marschieren.
Pican los ojos, ¿no lo pones café?
We walk up this tunnelled staircase and consider the uncanny prevalence of red and orange in both this street scene and this leather bag scene. Then at this advert for a company which sells watches and jewels. Looking up over the Institute of Statistics, we see an Egyptian figure giving the fascist salute, and looking down at this drain we see 4 dead leaves and a cigarette butt. Somehow or other we end up in this garden whose hedges resemble the efforts of a pop musician attempting to draw a treble clef. It's extremely quiet apart from the sound of a very unusual Baby Bear-like whine emanating from above. We look for a while at this fountain, which for some reason makes us desire the bathroom. I take this film in the bathroom mirror, mostly in reverence for my boogie rich outfit, praying that no one will ever see what I'm doing. We go on to a cafe where we both have almond milk cappuccinos, which I falsely call Mandela cappuccinos, before getting out our paints to make another pair of stabs at the same scene. These are the results. I know I'm not a painter because I always find the palette infinitely more beautiful than any painting which might emerge from it. We walk home through the shimmering Dawley streets, which seem like the palette for a more realistic depiction of the same streets, not so overpowered by blues and greens and reds. When I look at all-night vendors like these, I feel as if the real universe, flowing sternly and deliberately like the Tiber, was left behind several big decisions ago, and that you and I are occupying an especially weird tributary of it. It's funny to think of ancient Romans whose work seems emblematic of our endless human position, looking on their own home and thinking similar thoughts perhaps. Yes, we built this big famous cylinder here, but we could just as easily have built anything else anywhere else. To think that the same feelings I feel looking on the clientele of La Biga, that they are shards of glass lying under the smashed window of history, may also have passed through a Roman looking on their big famous cylinder under the smashed window of the moon. Ah, we stop for a while to watch this jittering streetlight. Whoa! Walking back to our apartment, the cars pulse with abominable hypermodern vitality, like electronic blood cells careering through the arteries of the city, and the words of the Futurist Manifesto dig their disgusting nails into my head.
We declare that the splendour of the world has been enriched by a new beauty, the beauty of speed. A racing automobile with its bonnet adorned with great tubes like serpents with explosive breath is more beautiful than the victory of Samothrace. We want to sing the man at the wheel. Beauty exists only in struggle. There is no masterpiece that is not an aggressive character. Poetry must be a violent assault on the forces of the unknown, to force them to bow down before man. We are on the extreme promontory of the centuries. What is the use of looking behind at the moment when we must open the mysterious shutters of the impossible? Time and space died yesterday. We are already living in the absolute, since we have already created eternal omnipresent speed.
The next day we look at this line of parked cars and their line of shadows, this stony office worker face submerged in a red pillar, this exceptionally beautiful edgeless puddle cropping out into a zebra crossing, and these shiny gold and silver air conditioning units on an orange wall that says TM, Talk Will Moom. We decide to walk by the Tiber, which is grimy and rancid, the only note of colour and care being provided by vandals. The majority looks like this, a swamp of arid filth with no silver lining.
There is a trending retweet of yours. You retweeted somebody from Il Duce 2016. It was a Mussolini quote. But you didn't know it was Mussolini when you retweeted. It said, "It is better to live one day as a lion than 100 years as a sheep." That's a famous Mussolini quote. You retweeted it. Do you like the quote? Did you know it was Mussolini?
It's okay to know it's Mussolini. Look, Mussolini was Mussolini. It's okay to. It's a very good quote. It's a very interesting quote, and I know it. I saw it. I saw what. I know who said it. But what difference does it make whether it's Mussolini or somebody else? It's certainly a very interesting quote.
Well,
that's probably why I have
is a
between
known
Facebook
fascist.
and Twitter 14 million people.
Do you
and
want to
other
be
people don't.
Do you want to be
It's a very
associated?
interesting quote, and people can talk about it.
You want to be associated with a fascist?
No, I want to be associated with interesting quotes.
The snotty bilge green of the river matches the slimy, moss-gagged paving stones of the riverside, where shabby men solicit you to large numbers of illegal acts. We wonder what this old block of stones was. I want to say Baroque pigeon coop, but I feel ancient Roman bridge is perhaps likelier. One of the stamps of this absurd city is that every heap of basic utilitarian civil engineering is potentially thousands of years old, painted by every painter you've ever heard of, and the model for 1,001 other bridges plonked with chutzpah over all the rivers of Europe. October and I stand in the queue for Castle Sant'Angelo and watch a child do a little spinny dance. After fierce negotiations, we manage to pry free tickets from the hands of a sick and dying man and spend our time inside the keep fraternising with other tourists about the manifold virtues of tourism. October speaks to these German men while I try to film their midriffs without detection.
Are you from Germany too? You too?
No. Sitting at this table, we talk to this pigeon and look down on this beautiful arrangement of green trees and orange buildings, a view which means even more to me than the cityscape towards St. Peter's, which is probably due to the presence of an American in my ear.
Like as they got more comfortable with me being in their family, like okay, they fed me well, comfortable room, easy work, super rude family.
Pope Pius gives audience to Allied soldiers for the first time since the war began. The pontiff already had given thanks that Rome had been spared the ravages of battle. And here he meets some 4,000 fighters who freed the Italian capital from Nazi tyranny.
Here is a photo of the same man in his pre-Pope days signing a pact with Germany fresh from its adoption of Nazi tyranny, and here for good measure is his predecessor signing a pact with Mussolini.
His Holiness was carried to the throne, giving the troops his blessing as he passed. It was an event such as Rome had never before witnessed. Linguist and world traveler, Pius spoke to the troops in English.
It is a real joy for us to welcome you all here within the very own home of the common Father of Christendom. Your presence naturally recalls to our mind the very pleasant days we had once the privilege of passing in the great capital of the British Empire. But it also summons up other memories of those heroes of the faith, Saint Edward and Saint Thomas à Becket, Saint John Fisher and Saint Thomas More, who shed a supreme and unfading glory on your country.
We stand on the castle roof and watch this nun taking a selfie, and this non-nun on her left do whatever she's doing. A nice Iranian man who objects to the titles of these videos takes this selfie with me, and we have a slightly stop-start chat as I photograph tourists. Pantone?
Yeah.
Where's that?
Or the
Pantheon. The Pantheon, yes. Yeah, I got some great footage of people acting funnily in there.
Your name is Jacob or?
Jack. Yeah, just Jack on my birth certificate. Jack used to be a sort of shortened version of John in English, Giovanni, but has become a name in its own right. Yeah, I think now America controls
the world.
How British people behave. We then stand together for a group photo with some strangers, including this Indian man on the left, who on learning that I'm British, breathlessly screams the praises of the Hugh Grant film About a Boy. Largely in honour of Hugh Grant, I compose 2 complimentary songs in my head as we mosey round. Your brain, life is so unfunny, all the money slips between my toes. Wesley Snipes, sinister, he chuckles in a field of seed, written in the lie of the land. The day's newspaper planes stand on my hands, on a lighter free instead of the slang. At your desk, why don't you Thatcher and Disraeli, or not to multiplicity, a risk of losing harassment of beige collar crimes. When chimes wrap my recollection in chains, dang dong. The rain shaka of Imra Mogadai. Everybody's gathered round me looking at the priceless price tag of a shredded, ragged, ruckled bag of t-shirts with God's face on them. My dog boards a grin, knows my an underrated actor. All he needs is a script with a side LOL. Yes, you sir, come laugh at my affluent head. Why did he stop using you? Set me on a submarine and wiggle your flesh while I discover he underwater session to recall my ABCs. Let's settle down to question and writing habits. Neither had a bad chance against the neo-pre-can. Is this how you make bread bake? Watch me drive my heart through the steak. Oops, that didn't go collectivist book club. A dope with his roped up I want satin bread a manger, screaming bread a manger. Nobody talking dogs, your favorite movies. Before we leave Rome, let me show you some footage of Nazi soldiers doing the same.
Bombastic Mussolini, the sawdust Caesar, comes to his end in the gutter, fitting climax to a life of treachery and double-cross. He led his country to ruin when he threw his lot in with Hitler. Oh yes, they saw some palmy days when Il Duce confidently stabbed France in the back. He had dreams of empire before the bayonets of the Allies deflated this false prophet. He was captured once before and rescued by German paratroops. This time he had no such chance. Partisans tried him along with his sweetheart and several henchmen. Just as these pictures show the trial previously of other key fascists and collaborators. He was brought before a firing squad, and in this manner he died as tyrants should, and was hung up by his heels. A fitting and glorious end.
We land in Sora, birthplace of Vittorio De Sica somehow, in whose honour I look at these shoes. Today is market day, so October and I buy some fruits and eat them on this hill by a church overlooking the mountains. Looking down on the town, I remain hopelessly ignorant about what it means, but reflect on how one might interpret this as a blessing rather than a curse, and don't dwell on it for too long. Before leaving the hill, we look at this bin, and go on a walk past this sad horse tied to a pole under a huge concrete overpass, and these reeds. We find accommodation at a farm stay and watch the sunset. That night we have a large bonfire using dead olive boughs. It is nigh on impossible for any mere mortal to comprehend the truth of the song. We don't have to take our clothes off to have a good time until they have tossed an olive bough onto a roaring inferno. While singing the song to myself, contemplating its veracity, I am suddenly overcome with ruminations over the fate of British teen pop star Lil Chris, whose cover of the 80s original charted while I was at high school. From Lowestoft, Suffolk, with a father who worked in a slaughterhouse and a mother who worked in a supermarket, this small, pleasant child was launched to minor celebrity after appearing on a reality show based on the movie School of Rock, where he fronted for his trashy school's trashy band. Signing a record deal on the back of the show and releasing a moderately successful debut single used prominently in an advert for Asda clothing, Lil Chris released 2 albums and 4 singles, with ever-decreasing popularity and chart performance. During his always declining fame, he tried to hold down a British TV chat show, tried to become a DJ, tried to break into musicals, tried to release a Christmas #1 titled Christmas #1, which failed to chart, then tried to make the difference in his gloomy post-fame life by becoming a door-to-door window salesman. He hung himself in his Lowestoft home on March 23, 2015. Everyone at his funeral wore green, which was his favourite colour. Oh, Lil Chris, you seemed like a nice man. Though staring into a fire on the night of a full moon may seem like a fine opportunity to commune with one's ancestors or reach some sort of pan-generational oneness with one's species, rather than ponder aimlessly about Lil Chris, I believe the fire, like a mind focused on no one topic in particular, has a way of accepting all things into its embrace. Lil Chris, Mussolini, Pius XII, Hugh Grant, the Futurist Manifesto, Keats, Shelley, the cats of 18th century Europe, and Europe itself. In the fire, the absurd, the tragic, the monstrous and the sweet dissolve into one rude, wild, worthless litter of beauty.